you please state your full name and birth date?
Shirley Higgins Lannon. I was born on March 4th, 1932.
Okay. Who were your parents and other family members?
My parents were Wesley and Elvira Higgins. She was Elvira Bubels. And my grandma and grandpa came from Germany in 1900. And my grandma and grandpa Higgins were born in Rockton in Roscoe, Illinois.
Mm-hmm. So your dad was a Higgins, and your mother, what was her maiden name?
Bubels.
Bubels. Okay. Your dad was a farmer?
Yeah, he farmed with his dad some, and when they were married, then he went with my grandpa, my mother's dad, and then my grandpa Bubels bought a farm, and then they farmed together.
Okay.
And we lived in this big house in Avalon.
And where was it? It was
in
it was out in the country from Avalon.
About a half a mile from Avalon.
Okay.
And yeah, we farmed. They farmed. I was little. I was born then 2 years or so after they kind of got on the farm, and a few years. Grew up on the farm and.
Yeah. So what size was the farm? About how many acres?
It was 140. It wasn't a very big farm, but then Dad had the Ayrshire cows, and he didn't have that many, not like herds nowadays.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So what did they do with the Ayrshire? Did you milk them? Or?
Yeah. He milked them, and then I showed them at the fair, and they were kind of special cows. They didn't give as much milk as Holsteins, but they had a lot of butter fat, and they were purebreds. They were all purebreds, and of course we had pigs and horses and chickens, and my grandpa and grandma lived, on the other side of this big house, and he did the chickens, Grandpa did, and eggs, and we never wanted for food. We always had it right there. And,
what type of crops did he grow in the fields?
Corn and oats, and that was pretty much it. And filled silo and did hay, hay mow for the cows, and And
so was your mother? Did she just? She was a homemaker.
Yeah.
She didn't work outside at home at all.
No, she didn't.
Yeah, there was enough to do with that.
Yeah. She had worked in Clinton a little bit before that, but.
So one of the things they did back then for farming was they had thresheries or threshing, but then a lot of farmers would come together. You want to tell about all that experience?
Well, yeah, of course my uncles lived quite close by, so they were someone on a farm across the road. They did, and the Wellnuts lived down the road. They all did thrashing and did all the food. The women had to cook all the food, had to do all the dishes and set all the tables, and there were probably 14, 15 guys, men that were really hungry, so he had to have. But they were, and then it was just interesting to see, what days they came and how long they stayed, so they didn't have to go someplace for dinner. And they had their special places that were better cooks than others. So and it was fun. And then,
how many of them did they like your dad? Would he go and help out at another farm then?
Oh yeah, they all
did. How many back and forth would you do?
Well, there were probably maybe 5 farms that they did. I don't just all remember that. I think, but then some had maybe 2, some had hired men that came, and so there was, and then they always had to have a horse team and a wagon that pulled the grain, after it was separated from the wheat or from the oats, and there was always a big day or 2, probably 2 days before. 2 days,
yeah. Well, so this all was happening during the 30s and 40s, and that was really a hard time. Was the Depression, and then it went into World War II.
It was Depression.
Yeah. So what do you remember about those times, and how did it affect your family and the farm life?
Well, it was there was rationing. and you know, you needed to, and you had to go. A lot of people didn't like butter. They wanted to have margarine because butter was rationed too, and you couldn't get that in Wisconsin. You had to go to Illinois for that. But sugar, you know, you had to go and had to go to the grocery store with your ration book and get all those things and clothes. And I was lucky my mother and my grandma sewed and knit and did all the things that, because that's where I kind of learned to sew because of, you know, that. And in 4-H I took sewing too, so that, you know, I had, But yeah, it was some hard times. I know that I don't remember because it wasn't really anything that affected me. You know, I wasn't old enough to.
Right. So that but the gas was also a problem.
Yeah,
wasn't it,
gasoline.
too? Yeah.
And then of course we always had farm gas. We had a big barrel that, you know, kept the farm gas in. So that was, and you know, then it wasn't as much. My dad didn't have a tractor until, oh my gosh, I probably was, I don't know, 10 or more, you know, before he had even, otherwise he had horses.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and you know, you hitched the horses to the wagon, and then the cars didn't take much gas. So, you know, that was, but it was, you know, it was some hard times. And,
Yeah. So, on the farm, did you have responsibility? Did you help out with chores, or not really?
Not
more in the house.
Yeah. Well, I was the only child.
You were the only child. Okay.
And you know, some people would say I was spoiled, I guess, but you know, it's just but I didn't have to do anything much outside. I drove tractors sometimes when they were haying and did some of that, but not too much. When I was in 4-H, then I had to do. You know, take care of my cows and the calves that I showed at the fair. But other than that, why I was not.
So that was the main thing you did in 4-H, was show animals.
Yeah, and then I did sewing, but that wasn't as important. It was, I liked the animals better.
Yeah. Did your mom have a big garden, and did she can foods?
No, yeah, they can, but my grandma and grandpa, like I said, lived on the other side of the house. And so that was Grandpa's. He had that big garden, and they canned and butchered chickens and did the basement was the butchering place, you know, and yeah, they did all that. And it was, we never wanted for anything because, you know, you had milk and you had eggs and you had meat. And
so where did you go for other type of shopping?
To Janesville.
To Janesville? Did you shop in Avalon?
Avalon groceries, but they didn't have much else in grocery stores.
Okay.
And a post office, and 2 grocery stores then.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we went to Janesville. Penny's and Sears, that was the main stores, you know, to shop at.
And your dad would go for machinery parts and that, or?
Well, yeah, and I don't really know. He must have went some. I guess I didn't know all that either, but. Avalon, of course, had a big milk factory, and they had a big feed store, Louis Lauder's feed mill, and you know, they had everything in 2 grocery stores.
Okay.
But I don't think they ever had any parts in that. I think my dad had to go somewhere, Janesville, to do that.
So you went to school in Avalon. Do you want to tell us about the school?
Yeah, it was 8 grades, and it was a big school. It was a regular school room, and then there was a basement and a cement floor, I think, on the basement. And upstairs, they had an second floor that we had card parties and if they had meals, and we used to do a lot of things. And the first floor had 8 grades.
8 grades were all
in one room.
And how many kids would be in that room?
Well, I think there was over 20, because, you know, with 8 grades, and they had more than 1 or 2 people. Some of them had, you know, 4 or 5, because they came from, you know, quite a ways, and it was, and then, like I said, the upstairs was used as a community center, and so it was.
So how did you get to school?
Walked.
You walked.
Pretty much, because I was just a short ways from school.
Oh, okay.
And the school was just
Did
probably...
most kids walk?
Well, yeah, or their parents brought them, but it was, the ones that were farther away, somebody brought, you know, and of course then they had cars or trucks or whatever.
And you brought your own lunch then?
Yeah, you brought your own lunch, and sometimes in the winter we had a stove, and you know, you would put you'd have something hot maybe, but most of the time when I was in school, I had a thermos in my lunch pail.
So you had like one of those like wood stoves in your room there?
At first it wasn't wood, it was fuel oil.
Oh, okay.
But then after a while, then they had the furnace too, so you know, it was kind of a modern school, I think, because it was so big. But it was like a community center too, so that made a difference too.
Did you have Christmas programs and all that?
Oh yeah. And that they would always have to put the stage up and everything in the school. That was in the school room, you know. And that was always the best time because there was so, you know, so much going on. Yeah, a lot of really nice Christmas programs.
Yeah, everybody in the community would come out for it?
Oh yeah, then it would be one night and they'd all come and yeah, and see everybody. You had pieces and that you memorized and everything, you know.
Oh sure, yeah.
Yeah,
were there any other type of events that they would have, or maybe
play days and
okay.
different, and then we had recess, you know, and so that everybody went out. Now I don't know that they have recess like we used to have, and outside toilets. They didn't have bathrooms.
Outside facilities.
Yeah,
okay.
One for the boys and one for the girls.
Oh,
and and just. We played games, you know. Now I don't think kids play games like we used to. Just do Red Rover, and you know, you played ball and you picked sides and and did the, you know, the fun things that kids, they don't.
It's a different life now.
Right.
So after 8th grade, you would have went in. You had to go into town to Clinton, right? To go to school, and you probably went to the building that's on Mill Street, the big brick building that's still there. That was the high school. Did you ride a bus to school?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was kind of scary, you know, from a country kid to get on that bus. But I had Pat across the road from me. We had directly across the road. I had 4 kids and one of them was already in high school, so she knew how to get on the bus. And you know, that's scary for a little country girl to get on that bus and go into Clinton.
Right.
And we didn't shop in Clinton that much, so I didn't really have that many people that I knew in Clinton at all. So,
as a teenager, did you do other things in high school besides the academics? Did you join the band, or were you in a play?
Well, yeah, I was in a play and I was a cheerleader.
Okay, so did the girls have intramural sports?
Because they not really.
They didn't. Not much.
They didn't.
I mean, they wouldn't.
They didn't do basketball or anything like
okay.
that. Didn't play ball or not like they do now.
So you would have friends in high school. I'm just wondering, how did you communicate? Your phone system, was that Clinton or Janesville?
It was Clinton.
It was a Clinton phone? Was it like a party line?
Yeah, it was. I could have a drink.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah. And sometimes on those party lines, you'd have two or three homes close by, right?
My aunts were on mine. My aunts and because then, you know, you rang the...
So how many rings was your place? I mean, you'd have different...
Two.
Two, okay, yeah.
And then if you were on the line, you just rang it. You didn't have to, you know, you just rang 2 or 3 or whatever.
I suppose you couldn't have very long conversations if you were sharing the phone.
Yeah, and you know, we didn't talk on the phone like kids do now. You know, now they talk on the phone a lot. Maybe not so much anymore because they use their cell phones, but but you could tell when somebody was calling somebody, because there were probably 4 people on the line.
Oh, really?
So when they rang, when they rang the phone, then you'd know, oh, somebody's getting a phone call. You knew who was getting called, and it was.
Okay. So you were able to call friends if you had to, but
sure.
you had to be careful.
The phones, And you know, we didn't call like they do now or use the phone like that, because it was kind of just for important things, and you know, if you needed to call somebody or
Yeah.
It was quite a bit different than what things are now
quite a bit different, right?
in those days, right?
Yeah. So also, as a teenager, when you got a little older, did you go into Clinton to go to the movie theater, or did you go to eat at Chick's or things?
Oh yeah, in high school, and that was a place to go, Chick's.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a yearbook that tells a lot about that too. You know, that
Were there other things in Clinton besides those two things that teenagers would go to?
Not a lot. There were different.
Was there a drive-in or not? I mean,
no, not at that time.
Okay.
There were a couple restaurants that but everybody went to Chick's pretty much.
Yeah.
It wasn't like drive movies or anything to
right. So you graduated in 1949, and I imagine your senior year you were thinking about what kind of career you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So what did you decide to do when you after you graduated?
Well, I decided to go to Milwaukee to beauty school, and I didn't really want to go on to school, but I thought that would be a good thing to do, and I can do it for all my life if I wanted to, which I did. For a lot of years.
So did you have to live there during that time period?
Yeah, then I worked for my room and board, but I was in school so much, and then I had to take the bus because I was quite a ways from downtown Milwaukee. I was in Wauwatosa, and so I had to just pretty much babysit and kind of do the last, the supper, dinner, dishes, whatever. But they were really nice people, and she'd done that before. Had people say, and so that was my first television. I hadn't seen television until I went to Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
To beauty school to see television.
So how long did that last that you were in school?
That was like 8 months.
8 months. And so you got graduated, licensed and everything, and then you went to work. Where did you go to work?
Then I went to work in Janesville.
In Janesville.
And in between that time, my folks had left the farm. And so I didn't have a place to come home to. They went to Illinois, and so they were a long ways from where I wanted to be. So I stayed with my aunt and uncle in Janesville and worked there for quite a few months, a year. And then I got married.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah. So
who did you get married to?
To Don Lannon, and we went together for a couple of years, almost 3 years before I'd come home from beauty school. And then we got married, and then I still drove from Clinton to Janesville. That was in Janesville, and worked there. So it was kind of till I had my first baby, and then I didn't work for quite a few years.
Yeah, so he was a farmer too?
Yeah, he farmed in Clinton.
Okay. What was different about his kind of farming compared to the kind of farming your dad did?
Well, it was years, quite a few years difference.
I was just wondering what.
And and my dad ended up having tractors, but this was a bigger farm, and it was just outside of Clinton, and it was different for me because I didn't come to Clinton that much. Shopping or anything, because when I was in school I didn't do that, and so that was for me to go to Clinton and Beloit. That was different, so I had to learn all that again too. But yeah, Don and they had more cows, and they had Holstein cows which were not registered like our Ayrshires were, and that was there were quite a bit of different things, but I didn't farm that much, and then I worked for a while, and then I, of course, had my boys.
Yeah.
So
how many boys did you have?
5.
You were busy.
Yeah. And in between, after they got a little bit bigger and being on a farm, my in-laws, my father-in-law, he would come and watch the kids, and then I went to work in Sharon for Francis Stutzenrod for Beautician. And so then I worked, off and on there, and the boys were close together, so it was easier to leave them. They kind of grew up together too. And so,
yeah. So how long did you work in Sharon?
I don't know exactly, but probably in the 40s. Because I started in Clinton. Well, then I didn't work for a while, and then Ethel Maxworthy asked me if I would come and work for her, and that was before the big fire. The day that it was a prom, and being Dorothy's beauty shop was on that side of the street, so they had to come across the street, and there was no water in Clinton, and all the girls that were going to the prom, and we were doing hair, and extra people doing there, and yeah, it was quite a day, and that was.
Yeah. So how long did you work for Ethel?
Oh my gosh, probably, I don't know. I probably worked for her for 15, 20 years, quite a long time.
Did you always enjoy visiting with people when you did that kind of work?
I like to visit anyway, and so it worked out really good. Yeah, it was, and made a lot of friends and a lot of people. Yeah. So
your boys grew up on the farm.
Yeah.
Did any of them decide to be farmers, or did they all go on to be something else?
None of them were farmers. They just were not interested particularly in it. They did farming and when they had to, but they didn't want to farm. So
you and your husband, what events or gatherings or get-togethers would you do with people in Clinton? What did you enjoy doing?
We loved to dance. We danced a lot, even in high school, and played cards and did a lot of things that, we used to have card parties at the houses, and then they go from house to house playing cards, and bowling. We bowled a lot, and for quite a few years, and all the fun things that was going on. We had a lot of friends and did a lot of the house things. You'd go to different ones' houses and have cards, or we played a lot of cards, and still do play a lot of cards. I do. But good. Then he's been gone for 20 years.
When did he die?
No, I can't. Right off the bat.
1998. What did you say?
When he had cancer, and it just wasn't very long, and he wasn't around anymore. But
So did you stay on the farm then after he passed?
I stayed on the farm for 10 years.
For 10 years. Yeah. Who did the farming then while you were on
the farm?
we
rented the farm out.
Oh, you rented it out. Okay.
We rented it out before he passed, because my folks were in Florida, and we used to go down there, and we wanted to do, some things, because he wasn't feeling good, but he was okay to go. He couldn't drive, but that was okay, because I drove, or we flew or something.
So that was 10 years you stayed on the farm, and then you decided to move to Clinton.
Yeah.
What did you...
I bought a house in Clinton and just sold the buildings.
Is that the house you live in now?
Yeah, that's the house I live in now.
And living in town must have been different than being on the farm all those years.
It was, but I was never one to be... It didn't bother me when I was alone, but I got so that I just didn't want to be alone out in the country. And so when I moved to town, it was quite a bit different, but I enjoy it, and I'm glad I moved.
So I'm sure you're active in many things in town now.
I bowled for years. I love to bowl. I golfed. I like to golf. I just am a people person. I like to be with people. And so I have good neighbors, and it's just really no problem. I guess it's when you make your mind up, you have to do it. But it got so I just didn't want to be alone in that big house, in the country, and it just was easier to be in a nice house.
Do you have family still living close by?
Oh yeah, I have. I have my youngest son lives in Clinton, and his wife, and they do a lot for me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Shirley. for sharing your memories. And the Clinton Community Historical Society is very grateful for your time and participation.
Well, it's fun. I had a good time doing it.
Okay.